Hello, 6th graders. Welcome to Big Ideas Math, Section 1.3, Order of Operations lesson. Pause while you write Section 1.3 lesson in your math notebook. Pause while you write the lesson objective in your math notebook. I will solve numerical expressions involving whole number exponents by using the order of operations to write and evaluate them. Yesterday, you copied down the key vocabulary during your activity lesson. Let's review those concepts now. A numerical expression is an expression that contains only numbers and operations. To evaluate or find the value of a numerical expression, we use a set of rules called the order of operations. That order of operations is right below here. First, we use parentheses, then we evaluate numbers with exponents, then we multiply or divide from left to right, and finally we add or subtract from left to right. So let's look at example 1, using order of operations. Letter A, when we evaluate 12 minus 2 times 4, we're going to multiply 2 and 4 first, because according to our order of operations, we multiply or divide before we add or subtract. So when we do that, we get 12 minus 8, because we multiplied first. 2 times 4 equals 8, so that's 12 minus 8, and that equals 4. Let's look at letter B. We evaluate 7 plus 60 divided by 3 times 5. Now, since the 3 times 5 is in the parentheses, we have to do that first. So we multiply 3 times 5, that gives us the 15 that's over here. And then we look at our order of operations and we say, okay, we have to divide next. So we divide 60 by 15, and that gives us 4. And then we are going to add 7 and 4, which gives us our final answer of 11. Please remember, if there's anything you don't understand, you need to mark that, view the lesson a second time, and if you're still unsure, be sure and put that in your exit slip and ask your teacher tomorrow during class. Example 2 says using order of operations with exponents. So we've used the order of operations with multiplication, subtraction, addition, division, and parentheses. Now we're going to add exponents in. And if we look up here at our key idea, the order of operations has exponents coming in second, right after parentheses. So our example has us evaluating 30 divided by, in parentheses, 7 plus 2 to the third power times 6. So we have to evaluate the power in parentheses first. So we have to evaluate 2 to the third power. Be careful, do not multiply the 2 times the 3. That's not correct. We have to multiply 2 times itself 3 times. And when we do that, we get the 8 that's right there. So we have our new expression looks like 30 divided by 7 plus 8 in parentheses times 6. Now you might be asking yourself, why did we do the exponent before we did the parentheses? And the answer is we had to do the exponent first because it was in the parentheses. And it comes before the addition that is in the parentheses. Now, your next job is to perform the operation that's in the parentheses. So we're not done with the parentheses yet. So we add the 7 plus 8 in parentheses, and we get this 15 down here, and everything else stays the same. So we have 30 divided by 15 times 6. And then our next job is going to be to divide 30 by 15. And when we do that, we get this 2. And we are going to multiply that by 6 2 times 6 equals 12. So this is exactly what you used to do in 5th grade, except we have thrown exponents into the mix now. So you used to do this up to parentheses, but you never had exponents before. So we're just adding exponents in. Be sure to read the study tip at the left. It tells you to remember to multiply and divide from left to right. In example 2, you should divide before multiplying because the division symbol comes first when reading from left to right. So always be careful with that. Multiplication and division are in the same step in order of operations, and addition and subtraction are in their same step in order of operations. So be careful with that. Moving on to page 19. There's a little note at the top of the page that you should write in your notes. I'm going to mark it with a star here. So pause and write this in your notes. The symbols X and dot are used to indicate multiplication. And then it says you can also use parentheses to indicate multiplication. And it gives you an example. 3, and then the 3 is just squished up right up next to the parentheses. And that tells us that we're multiplying the 3 times whatever the result is of what's in the parentheses. So 3 times 2 plus 7 is the same as 3 times 2 plus 7. So be careful, and when you see that 3 squished up next to the parentheses, that means that you're going to multiply the 3 times the result of what's in the parentheses. So this is another way to note multiplication. So now you have 3 or 4 different ways to note multiplication. So be careful and remember all of those different ways. Pause and put that in your notebook so that you can remember it during a test. Now let's look at example 3, using order of operations. We're going to evaluate 9 plus 7 times 5 minus 2. We're using our fancy new way of looking at multiplication. So remember, we have to do parentheses first, and when we do that, we start with 5 minus 2, which is 3, and so we got our 3 there, and then we're going to multiply first because that's next in our order of operations. So we're going to multiply the 7 times the 3, which is 21. That gives us our 21, and then we are going to add 9 plus 21, which equals 30. Now looking at letter B, we're going to evaluate 15 minus 4 times 6 plus 1 in parentheses divided by 2 to the 2nd power. So we have to start with parentheses always and do what's in there first. 6 plus 1 equals 7. So that's where we got that 7. And then we have to do exponents next. So we have to evaluate 2 to the 2nd power. 2 times 2 is 4, so that's where we get that 4. And then we multiply and divide left to right. So in this case, multiplication comes next. So we multiply 4 times 7, and we get this 28. And then we're going to divide next, and we're going to divide 28 by 4, which gives us this 7. And then finally we're going to subtract 15 minus 7, which gives us our final answer of 8. Finally, we come down to example 4, which is our real-life application. We buy some foam spheres, paint bottles, and wooden rods to construct a model of our solar system. What is the total cost? So we're going to use the table here to figure this out. It says use a verbal model to solve the problem. Remember that a verbal model is an equation. I'm going to write that down because this is something that Go Math did not cover. but it's a term that Big Ideas does use. Verbal model equals equation. So you might want to stick that in your notes because you're going to come across it in this book quite a bit. So it says use a verbal model to solve the problem. So the cost of 9 spheres is $2. So it's $2 for each sphere, so 9 times 2. And the cost of 6 paint bottles, and paint is $3 per bottle, so that's 6 times 3. And then the cost of 8 rods, and each rod is $1, so that's 8 times 1. So they have written it out for us, 9 times 2 plus 6 times 3 plus 8 times 1. And that equals, we have to use our order of operations, 9 times 2 plus 6 times 3. So we want to multiply first 18, and then we want to multiply again plus 18, and then we want to multiply the third one plus 8. So we did all of our multiplication there, and then we want to add that up, and when we add it all up, it equals 44. So our total cost is $44. In order to get credit for viewing your flipped lesson, you need to complete your notes in your interactive student notebook, complete your on-your-own questions in your interactive student notebook, and submit them in your Google form, and complete your Big Ideas math assignment in your math notebook and submit that when it is 100% correct. Be sure to visit your teacher if you have any questions.